Lost in the Dark. If you value real rescue stories told by someone who's lived them, stay with me. Subscribe now, because what you're about to hear isn't dramatic fiction. It's what happens when darkness, terrain, and time work against a human life. His flashlight had gone out hours ago. That was the first thing that stayed with me when the call came in. A missing hiker, male, late 50s. Experienced enough to go out alone, confident enough to underestimate the terrain. Somewhere deep in the forest, steep ground, no cell signal, temperature dropping fast. I've learned over the years that darkness changes everything. The forest you know in daylight becomes something else entirely at night. Depth disappears. Distance lies to you. Sounds move in ways they shouldn't. And when a light goes out, panic doesn't scream. It settles in quietly. We staged at the trailhead just before dusk. The sky was already fading, that dull gray blue that tells you night is coming whether you're ready or not. The air smelled like damp leaves and cold earth. It had rained earlier, not enough to cancel the search, but enough to make every slope a problem waiting to happen. I gathered the team and went over the plan. Slow, methodical grid search. No hero moves, no shortcuts. In terrain like this, one rescuer turning into a second victim helps no one. I've buried enough friends to know that lesson by heart. As we moved in, the forest closed around us. The kind of silence that isn't peaceful. No wind, no insects. Just our boots against wet ground and the quiet rhythm of breathing through exertion. Radios worked at first, then started to crackle and fade as elevation changed. That's when the mental clock starts ticking. A man alone, injured or exhausted, without light, in steep terrain, doesn't have many good outcomes. Hypothermia doesn't rush. It waits. It convinces you to sit down. To rest, to stop fighting. I kept scanning the ground as much as the distance. Broken branches, disturbed leaves. Any sign that someone had gone where they shouldn't have. Experience teaches you not to look for people where they're supposed to be, but where mistakes lead them. About an hour in, we found the first sign. A footprint off the trail, sliding downhill. Not deliberate, not controlled. The kind of mark made when someone loses balance and overcorrects. That told me more than any map could. He was off route, and he was descending. Steep terrain is unforgiving. Gravity doesn't negotiate. Once you start going down in the dark, getting back up isn't guaranteed. We adjusted the search pattern. Slowed even more. Every step tested before weight was committed. I felt the strain in my calves, the constant tension of keeping balance on slick ground. Sweat built under my gear despite the cold. That combination is dangerous. Wet skin, falling temperature, fatigue. The forest doesn't care how trained you are. I thought about all the times I'd trained for this. Rope work on slopes, night navigation, lost person behavior models. They all live in your head, until a moment like this, when they have to surface without hesitation. Somewhere ahead, an owl called. The sound cut through the silence like it was meant to unsettle us. One of the younger firefighters slowed, instinctively looking around. I didn't say anything. Fear isn't weakness. Letting it control your movement is. Another hour passed. No voice, no response to call-outs. That's never a good sign. People who can answer usually do. Silence means injury, confusion, or something worse. I called a brief halt and checked time. Temperature was dropping faster than forecast. We were losing the margin. That's when command decisions stopped being theoretical. Push harder and risk the team, or pull back and risk the victim. I chose to push, not recklessly, not emotionally, but because every indicator told me time was the enemy now, not terrain. I've learned to trust patterns when emotions try to interfere. We moved lower, following the natural drainage line. Water always shows you where people fall. Rocks slick with algae, mud that sucks at your boots. Every step deliberate, controlled, exhausting. Then we heard it. Not a voice, not a shout. A sound too weak to be intentional. A shift of rock. Something dislodged and tumbling a short distance before stopping. That kind of noise only happens when someone moves without strength. I raised my hand. Everyone froze. You could feel the tension lock in. Hearts pounding, muscles tight, breathing shallow. We called out again. This time, there was an answer. Barely audible, broken. A sound that wasn't a word but carried enough meaning to change everything. He was alive. If you're still listening, stay with me. This is where the forest decides how much it's willing to give back. That sound changed the entire night. Everything before it had been preparation. After it, everything became precision. We had a living person somewhere below us, injured or exhausted, in terrain that didn't forgive mistakes. Now the clock wasn't theoretical anymore. It was personal. I answered him immediately, keeping my voice low and steady. Panic travels downhill fast. Calm has to move faster. I told him who we were. Told him not to move unless we told him to. Told him help was already there, even if it didn't feel like it yet. Another faint sound came back. Not words. Just proof of breath. We advanced carefully, using headlamps only when necessary, shielding them with our hands. Light can disorient someone in shock. Darkness, oddly enough, was familiar to him by now. Sudden brightness could push him into confusion. The slope steepened. Loose rock shifted underfoot. Every step required 3 points of contact. I could feel the tension in my thighs, the way muscles start to tremble when they've been working too long but aren't allowed to stop. Sweat ran down my back and chilled immediately when I paused. My heartbeat was loud in my ears. steady but insistent. We found him about 20 minutes later. He was wedged against a fallen tree, half sitting, half slumped, legs tangled in roots and brush. His face was pale, eyes open but unfocused. No flashlight, no pack within reach. One shoe missing, hands trembling uncontrollably. Hypothermia doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like surrender. I knelt in front of him, careful not to shift his weight. Spoke to him slowly. Asked simple questions. Name? Pain. Can you move your fingers? His answers came late, but they came. That mattered. He'd slipped hours earlier, slid down the slope, tried to climb back up, failed, slid again. Each attempt cost him energy he couldn't afford to lose. Eventually, he'd done the only thing left. He stopped moving. People think stopping is weakness. In survival, it's sometimes the only intelligent choice left. We assessed him where he was. Possible ankle fracture. Bruising along the ribs. No obvious spinal injury, but terrain like this makes assumptions dangerous. He was cold to the touch, wet, exhausted, and running on whatever reserves were left. Extraction was going to be slow, and slow in the cold is dangerous. I called command and gave the update. Alive, conscious, steep terrain, technical rescue required. Estimated long carryout. That's when the weight really settled in. This wasn't over, it was just changing shape. We insulated him immediately. Dry layers, heat packs, where we could. Shielded him from the wind that had started creeping through the trees as night deepened. I could smell damp earth mixed with sweat and fear. That smell stays with you longer than you expect. While we waited for rope teams to reposition, I stayed with him, kept him talking, not about the accident, about anything that kept his mind anchored. His job, his family, the trail he loved. People hang on better when they remember what they're hanging on for. At one point, he looked at me and asked how long he'd been down there. I told him the truth. Long enough that he was lucky we were stubborn. He tried to laugh. It came out as a breath. If you're still listening, this is where you understand something about rescue work. Finding someone is only the beginning. Getting them out safely is the part that breaks people if they're not disciplined. The rope team arrived quietly, efficiently, no wasted movement, no unnecessary words. Veterans read each other without speaking much. Anchors placed, lines tested. Every knot checked twice, because gravity only needs you to be wrong once. We packaged him carefully, every movement deliberate, every adjustment explained to him before it happened. Surprise creates panic. Panic creates mistakes. As we began the ascent, the forest felt even darker. Headlamps bobbed in controlled patterns. The slope fought us every step of the way. Mud grabbed at boots, rocks shifted, muscles burned. Halfway up, we had to stop. Not because of us. Because of us. That's another hard truth. Rescuers have limits too. Ignoring them turns one patient into many. We rotated positions, hydrated, rechecked anchors. He drifted in and out. But each time I spoke, his eyes found me. That connection mattered more than any piece of gear. I leaned close at one point and told him something I don't say lightly. You're not dying tonight. Not here. I believed it when I said it. Belief matters. We moved again, inch by inch, refusing to rush what couldn't be rushed. Above us, the trail lights finally came into view. Distant but real. That sight does something powerful to a team. It turns exhaustion into determination. If you want to hear how this night ended, stay with me. Subscribe now, because the final stretch is where experience either pays off or collects interest. The forest hadn't given him back yet, but it was starting to loosen its grip. The last stretch was the hardest. Not because the terrain got worse, but because hope was finally close enough to feel real. And that's when mistakes like to sneak in. The trailhead lights grew brighter as we climbed, but the slope didn't ease up. My legs felt like they were filled with wet cement. Every muscle burned, not sharply, but with that deep, dull ache that comes from hours of controlled effort. Sweat soaked my gear again, then chilled when we stopped to reset the ropes. My hands were raw inside my gloves, fingers stiff from cold and repetition. The man barely spoke now. That worried me, but his breathing was steady, and when I asked him to squeeze my hand, he did. Weakly, but on purpose. Consciousness isn't loud when the body is spent. Sometimes it's just quiet cooperation. We moved in short increments. Lift, secure, reset, check, repeat. It's not dramatic work, it's stubborn work. The kind that only succeeds if everyone agrees that quitting isn't an option. At one point, a rock shifted under one of the team members. Nothing catastrophic, just enough to remind us how unforgiving the slope still was. We froze instantly, locked in place, tension humming through the ropes. After a few seconds, everything settled. No one spoke. There was nothing to say. The forest had made its point. I leaned in close to the man again and told him we were almost there. He didn't answer, but his eyes moved toward the light above us. That was enough. When we finally reached level ground, it felt unreal, like stepping out of another world. The trees opened up, the air felt different, and the darkness loosened its grip. Paramedics moved in smoothly, practiced hands taking over care without rush or noise. Warm blankets. Oxygen 4 started. His body responded almost immediately, like it had been waiting for permission to let go. I stepped back then. That's another thing veterans learn. Knowing when your part is done, I watched as they loaded him into the ambulance. The doors closed softly, not with urgency, but with confidence. The engine started. Red lights reflected off the trees, turning trunks into brief flashes of color before the vehicle disappeared down the road. Only then did I really feel it. The exhaustion hit all at once. My shoulders sagged, my jaw unclenched, my breathing slowed. The forest was quiet again, but it felt different now, less hostile. Like it had finished testing us. We packed up gear slowly, deliberately. No one rushed. These moments matter too. They're how you come back from the edge without carrying it all home. On the drive back to the station, I stared out the window at the dark passing by. Roads I'd driven 1,000 times looked unfamiliar after a night like that. Rescue has a way of changing perspective. Things feel thinner for a while, like the barrier between normal life and disaster isn't as solid as people think. Later, after the gear was cleaned and reports were started, I sat alone for a moment. The station was quiet. Most of the crew had gone to grab food or stretch sore muscles. I stayed back, helmet on the table in front of me, hands resting on it without thinking. I thought about the moment his flashlight went out. Such a small thing. A battery dying, a switch failing, and suddenly a man's world shrinks to darkness, cold and waiting. People underestimate how quickly control disappears when light does. That's why I tell this story. Not to impress, not to dramatize, but to remind people how thin the line really is. Between confidence and overconfidence, between adventure and emergency, between being prepared and being lucky. We got him out because training held, teamwork held, and because we respected the terrain instead of trying to dominate it. The forest didn't defeat us that night, but it didn't surrender easily either. Days later, we got an update. He was recovering, surgery on the ankle, bruised ribs, hypothermia, but no lasting damage. He'd asked about the team, wanted to say thank you. That mattered more than he probably realized. People often ask why we keep doing this job after so many years. After the cold nights, the danger, the exhaustion, the answer isn't excitement. It's moments like this, quiet victories that most people will never see, but that echo long after. If you've listened this far, stay with me. Subscribe. These stories aren't about fear, they're about respect. For the job, for the risks, for the people who step into the dark and trust that someone will come looking. That night, his flashlight had gone out hours ago, but because a team refused to rush, refused to quit, and refused to underestimate the dark, he didn't stay lost in it.